So yeah, I was rushing to get back. No worries. No worries. So last week, and so I did some research. Oh boy, what a hot mess. Okay. I looked at the I looked at the police report. I looked at the body camera footage. I looked at the footage that the guy Dakota, the boyfriend, had filmed. And then I went and looked at like some other incidences of domestic violence as well as looked in the comments. And let all right, it's giving Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And the reason why it's giving Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is because you have very strong opinions on both sides. Both people are insisting that one person or the other is abusive. She clearly was assaulting him. Um, and but the people that are sort of like on her side defending her are saying that, it's clear that he's a narcissistic abuser and that anyone who is not familiar with narcissistic abusers, you know, doesn't recognize the pattern. Let me take those off. I'm going to preface this by saying I'm a guardian ad litem. And so I have the paralegal background, but also I've got the guardian ad litem background. And so people are looking at like, oh, is she the abuser? Is he the abuser? In terms of like the couple that dyad, that particular interaction. What concerned me the most is when like she's throwing metal stools at the guy. One of them hits her daughter, who's like, what do they say? Like 7? Young daughter. You hear her start to cry on the footage. Not only that, but there's like at least one other child, maybe 2, upstairs asleep. And she's inebriated, the mother. And he doesn't live there. Regardless of what your precipitating incident is, even if you think, "Oh, I'm a victim of abuse who's been, let's say, set up to respond poorly," the second your child is injured, that should be your focus. That should be your attention. You immediately stop whatever it is you're doing to go check on your child. Not only that, but he makes a comment in the video about how she hit her child and she does like a blame shifty thing, like, that he's responsible for it. It's like, no, 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 ma'am. You picked up those chairs. Obviously she's feeling righteous, she's feeling justified. So I understand where some of the people who are looking at the situation who are saying it's narcissistic abuse. I don't know that we can have enough background information to assert that. However, he does in his own video and in the body camera footage, he does seem to have a little bit of duper's delight. Like he's smiling at certain points where it just makes you go like, that seems sus. Um, However, in that particular interaction, she's clearly committing assault. She's not defending herself. She injured her child. She's being abusive to her child. Um, the focus immediately should have been on the child, on the child's welfare, and regardless of whether or not she is being provoked into responding violently and, like hypothetically speaking, let's say that the idea that he's a narcissistic abuser and she was provoked by him into responding in these ways. Some people were calling it reactive abuse, which I've talked about that before. I'm not usually a fan of that framework at all. Um, even were we to grant that, like in a hypothetical, she still did commit legally, she did commit assault, and she injured her own child, assaulted her own child. So the arrest was appropriate by the police officers. They arrested the primary aggressor. This sort of gets into, and I've mentioned this before, I think at least in one other video. There's a difference between legal abuse and abuse that we would morally consider to be abusive, but like doesn't necessarily rise to the level of being legal abuse. So you wouldn't be able to get like an assistant DA to come in with a charge and like a case or anything like that. So again, hypothetically speaking, let's say that this person is being a victim of like his narcissistic abuse. His abuse may not rise to the level of being legal abuse. Her response, and I'm not saying it was, I'm just saying in the hypothetical, her response of assault rises to the level of something that's legally actionable. So, anyway, for those of you just joining, I'm talking about the Bachelorette situation, which I did not know anything about. So when I was researching it and I was watching the videos, she was very comfortable to be aggressive in front of the police officers. She was very clearly trying to control the dynamic. And so I'm not going to make a statement as to who is quote unquote the abuser in this situation. But what I will say is she was definitely clearly comfortable with being violent and acting violence. She's the one who had to be removed from the situation for it to calm down. And even in the police car on her way to the station to get booked and processed, she she had the audacity that only someone who is not afraid of the police could have. She was basically like, asking questions to the officer, and then she's like, yes or no," and I was like, I could not believe I could not believe, like, how she was talking to this police officer, like, I would never. But again, that said, the guy the guy was he something doesn't seem quite right. And to be fair, I have personally had a response to abuse where I was laughing. So, eh, his kind of smile and laughing, it could just be from incredulousness. It could be the duper's delight, but I have definitely been in a stress situation and that has been my response. So it's like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and then for me, hysterical laughing out of nowhere, not because I'm actually finding it funny, but that's for some reason what my body decided to do. So in the only 2 judgments I am personally comfortable with making after reviewing the body camera footage and the, police report and the stuff that he was filming would be to say that she clearly committed assault, the arrest was appropriate, and she was being abusive toward her own child, right? So, it's still abusive when you're enacting violence in front of your children, and it's also abusive when you're hitting your children. She wasn't the intended target, but she did hit her child. Um, but that said, I don't know anything about this woman. I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know anything about the Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives or whatever the name of that show was. And I don't follow The Bachelorette. Although I did see some people that were saying that she had been inappropriate, like on another show. I guess she was maybe one of the contestants for one of the men. So when we're victims of abuse and we want people to recognize that we are the victim, it really helps to minimize the amount of force that you are using. So for example, in the video, she alleges that he pushed her into or he put her into the garage and pushed her. And that's why she came out and was hitting him and being aggressive on the video. If you are trying to defend yourself, you enact as much power as you need to get the person off of you so that you can get away and get to a safe place. What we don't do from a legal standpoint is then chase down the person and give them a beat down. I'm not saying it never happens, but I'm just saying you're on less solid legal ground and you're on less solid ground to say that you're the victim if that's what you're doing. Whenever I look at victim dynamics, I'm often looking at like who do I have to remove from this situation for it to stop? A lot of abusers, they like to have the last word. They like to push and push and push and push and push and push. Um Something that did pop out at me that I thought that he possibly could be controlling on was he was very focused on her not drinking, getting her into a program. He didn't want to sign a witness statement unless he thought that it would get her into a program. And that could be a controlling thing. However, you could also make an argument that he was doing that because he was concerned for the safety of the children. Um, so that's one of those things where possibly depending on what he's seeing, you could make a case for saying that I was being controlling for this specific objective. So I don't he's very smart in what he's doing in terms of legally. He is not really posting anything to social media. He is letting his attorneys handle it or letting the attorneys handle it. And he's just staying quiet. She's sort of the one that doesn't seem to have everything cohesively together, and it seems like she's putting together, like a defense of what happened by saying that she was a victim of abuse, um, which is iffy because you need to be real careful about what you say in public against a person. You can get into defamation territory very quickly. So I just want to say I'm a paralegal. I'm not an attorney. This is not legal. This is for entertainment purposes only. But that's why when I'm talking to victims of abuse, you know, that's why I recommend it's essentially the same thing that you'll see with the gun legislation or like not the castle rights doctrine, but anytime someone pulls their weapon, they have to be in fear for their life. And when a gun is not involved, you have to look at, what level of force do I need to exert? Hi. Oh my gosh, hi. What level of force do I need to exert to make sure that I can protect myself, but I'm not going so far as to now be confused for being the perpetrator. So anyway, just sort of a catch up, talking about The Bachelorette and how that got canceled, and the dialogue around who is the victim, who's the perpetrator. My take as a guardian ad litem and paralegal is that she did commit assault. That's not a statement as to who's the abuser in the relationship dynamic. However, there are flags on both sides, and that her being arrested was appropriate. So that's what I have to say about that. I was going through the police footage like, girl, no, like the audacity. Um, okay. So I did want to talk about there was something I had said in a previous video where I was talking about like abusers might seem vulnerable. And so you think, "Oh no." And then you want to have empathy for them, and that can be part of like how you get trapped in the abuse dynamic. So that could be your parents, that could be someone that you are romantically with, that could be a friend where you look at a person and you see them as vulnerable and maybe even childlike, and you just don't want to give them consequences. You want to give them a pass. You have empathy for their situation. And what I sometimes when they don't have power, they come across as vulnerable. That same person, though, they're in a position of power and suddenly they are not acting vulnerable. So sometimes that vulnerability on the part of the abuser could be calculated and could be situational. I know I'm not in a position of power, so how I'm going to protect my position or gain an advantage might be to seem vulnerable or might be to transmit vulnerability. But once you're in a position of control and power, like then not being vulnerable and just doing whatever you want at another person and being harmful. So yeah, Everyone wants to figure out abusers, but not only is it context specific to the actual abuser and to the situation and to everyone involved, but also it could literally be like you could take the same person and put them in a different place. And that's honestly, that's why sometimes you see like the switch flip with abusers where they didn't seem like an abuser and then circumstances changed. Maybe you bought a house, maybe you had a child, and then or got married, and these life changing moments, and then suddenly you're dealing with a person you don't recognize. Some of that can be because they're now in a position of power they weren't in before, like now we're legally married and I'm your husband or wife. Or now we live in this house and I feel entitled because before I was visiting you in your apartment, but now we live in a place together and I have more power and control and authority here. Um, or, sometimes someone's perspective of what it might mean to be a boyfriend or girlfriend versus a husband or wife, what their expectations are of the other person, that might change. So somebody might be like, "Oh, boyfriend, whatever, girlfriend, whatever." And then now it's like, "Well, I'm the husband, I'm the wife. You have to XYZ." And so you would think nothing's really changed. The relationship we have should still be the same, but from their perspective, perhaps their expectations changed, and therefore how they're acting in the relationship changed, or their position of power changed, and therefore how they're acting in the relationship changed. Um, so when you see like the switch up, when like wait, what is happening right now? Sometimes it's how they're thinking, and sometimes it's just what's available for them to do. And yeah, that's a mess. Alrighty. Oh, I wrote this. No, I'm gonna do this other thing first. Okay. Whenever you're talking to abusers, whenever you're talking to excuse me, victims of abuse about abusers, like hold on. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. So one of the biggest signs of abuse is actually for people who don't realize they're in an abuse dynamic. There's a long lead up time that victims are in as they're trying to troubleshoot like what the problem is. They think it's a relationship problem. They don't realize it's an entitlement problem. It's an abuse dynamic. And so they are often deeply, deeply confused and hurt. And so they keep trying these relationship tools and relationship techniques, and they aren't working because they don't understand the nature of the issue. And so when someone is just confused as to what's happening, confused as to why things aren't working, confused as to why more communication isn't helping. Well, I've explained myself. I've explained um my perspective, and I've done the work to find out like what your perspective is, and the victim is, spun up and trying to understand and solve the problem, and they're very confused. And that is often one of the very first signs really that you're being abused, is when like it doesn't make sense, what they're doing doesn't make sense, what they're saying doesn't make sense. One of the reasons is because the way that they're acting and the things that they're saying are not aligned. And then for you, what's happening and what your perspective and model of the relationship is also not aligned. And so there's a lot of ability for victims to be confused. And then they start this process of research. Usually it starts in relationship, research. Like how do I improve our communication? How do I be a better partner so that things get better? They think there's something that they can do to fix the dynamic. When in reality, they can't because they don't understand the nature of the problem. Fundamentally, there's a respect problem. Fundamentally, there is an entitlement problem. And so when you try to solve the relationship issues, when you try to solve the relationship issues with the or abuse issues with the relationship tools, it doesn't work. Okay, girl, or person, boy, whomever. Why are you frustrated? What's happening? Like, are you in an abuse dynamic right now that's you can't get out of? I just wanna make sure that we check in on you and make sure everything is okay. But that's okay. If you're not ready to talk about it, no worries. Um, yeah, so there's a reason why a lot of what I talk about on the subreddit is oriented towards, oh, the silent treatment. Okay. Okay. Are they taking a break or is it like we're outright you're getting the silent treatment to make you cave? Oh. Yeah, I saw that you were a voice actor. I was like, I want to ask questions, but obviously I don't want to like write too much. Yeah, so the thing about the silent treatment in particular, it relies on you not having distress tolerance, like the victim's inability to hold the feelings of being ignored. And so they basically think that if they do it, you'll feel so bad that you'll crack and maybe you'll even come back and apologize, even if you didn't do anything wrong, right? Just to get it over with. So victims of abuse are often feeling moved within themselves. They want to end the conflict. And I've seen many victims of abuse, go ahead and agree to things and take fault because they just want it to be over. Um, oh, is that what's going on? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So one of the things that actually helped me realize that I needed to expand that distress tolerance was watching my like son when he was little, like he'd be so upset, like so upset. And he would be so upset and they're little, they're toddlers, they're upset you didn't cut their sandwich the right way. And so that really was a moment for me to go, "Oh, he's having feelings. Valid feelings. This is the first time in his entire life that the sandwich has not been cut in the way that he wants it to be cut. Even if that was not communicated to literally anybody, doesn't make sense. They're in their feelings. The feelings are valid. It's not reasonable though for me to sit here and feel bad about it. I can have empathy for him. But like having that distance was actually really helpful. And I was able to transfer that to like like with the adults. So when the adults are having their feelings, I was taking them seriously. I was like, oh no, this person is feeling bad. This person is feeling and I want to comfort them or I don't want I want the conflict to end. But having dealt with having a toddler who is having these big feelings, and I was able to get that emotional distance. So like I can still check in with myself and think, "Oh, okay, they're having a hard time," but I'm not I don't know how to explain it. You're like triggered within yourself, like to panic and do something. Um, and so anyway, with the silent treatment, or with certain types of other emotional abuse, like if they talk down about themselves or they talk down about you, or, oh, I must be the worst mother, or whatever it is, you know, it's often to trigger that in you and you just respond, you're just reacting to it because holding there's no distance between you and their bad feelings. So now the nice thing about getting older is you get better at setting boundaries, you get better at not taking people's emotions on personally. You kind of get that distance. And so when they're doing that, and you're just like, "Oh, all right, well, check back in with me when you want to have a discussion." And it doesn't hit you in your heart. It doesn't make you freak out. It's not sending you into a panic. So I don't know if you can get to that place, but once you can get to that place, it's so much better in terms of dealing with like the silent treatment. Hopefully, though, the goal is to recognize, oh, not a safe person, not a safe relationship. Maybe we don't do that anymore. But I understand being trapped like in a mortgage or like a lease or something. So a lot of people do stay because of the finances. Oh, you're in a bad situation with your parents. Do you live with your parents? Oh boy. Okay. What is going on with that? It's hard because 'cause I'm on a computer, I tippy tap, but I know a lot of people are on phones, and it takes longer to write responses. Yeah. It's extremely expensive out there. 100%. There's a reason why people are living with their parents. So, I'm gonna guess maybe they're using, that power over you in terms of, like, providing the home to maybe make you come home at a certain time, follow a curfew, follow some rules, etcetera. Does that sound right? Yeah, yeah. Um, Gosh, that's a hard trade-off. I literally slept in my car, so I didn't have to do that. I was like, not for me." I'm not recommending that for you at all. Um, but yeah, you know, there are some parents, they wanna be controlling, they wanna determine who you are and what you do, and they have ideas about what is optimal and the best way to make that happen. Um, I think some how do I put this? I think some curfew kind of rules could make sense just in general in terms of, like, you don't wanna be woken up at 4 AM because you hear a door, like, that would be very, like, if that's a regular like, occurrence, then I could imagine having a conversation with, like, my son and being like, "Hey, man, 4 AM every night does not work for me." Um, I personally don't know that I would actually say, though, like, "You can't." Um, they're not respecting you as an adult. They're also treating you the way they are because you are within their clutches, essentially. And so renegotiating that, especially if they were high control parents, which I'm guessing they were, for some reason, there's a lot of people who end up following the channel or the subreddit or the Discord who have Asian families. And so the high control in Asian families is the cultural expectations there are very hard to push back on. Not saying that that's your situation, but it's extremely difficult to give like advice for people in that situation because the entire construct of the family and the construct of which everybody related to the family, what they understand to be correct and right, is following these other cultural norms. My mom's side of the family, we're all Hispanic on that side of the family, and so they can also be high control, um, especially towards girls. So if you're a woman, if you're a girl, um, you get rules the boys don't get. Oh, geez, so that's like the back end of COVID. Yeah, yeah, that's boy, what a hard time to realize that. Do you have anybody, like any support in your, maybe friends or like another adult that you can trust to kinda, like, talk to about it? Yeah, yeah, not in my family, no. That sounds right. I had some random person at church that, I adopted as my godfather who became the person I talked to, but I didn't even tell him everything, so, he didn't know until I was well an adult. Um, so if they're that kind of parent, the usual recommendations that I give is obviously to not be in the home as much as possible. And usually they'll be more comfortable with things like study groups, they'll be more comfortable with like the library, they'll be more comfortable with things related to school or things related to like let's say you have an internship at a nonprofit, even if you're not getting paid, you're getting out of the house, you're like, "Oh, I'm adding to my resume. I'm making these connections." Whatever it takes. Um to sort of spend much less time at home. Oh, that's great. Okay, that's a solid core group of people. The therapist, case manager, life coach, friends online. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, I'm not saying that solves the problem, but that definitely gives you some support and people to talk to and bounce ideas off of, like, who know your specific situation. Yeah, I waited, way too long to go to a therapist, and I recommend it to victims of abuse, and they're always like, "Oh, I should, but I'm not going to," and I'm like, yeah, that sounds right." So I'm so glad you're already one up on so many victims of abuse who really resist it for some reason. Well, so what I would say is, just sort of I still don't have a job and I don't know how to drive, but I have a learner's permit. Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah, the driving. Is there like a friend that will let you practice on their car? Because if you have a friend with a car, you can actually do quite a bit with that. Like getting your license and like having that step to freedom. Yeah, you sound trap, like no job. So the thing is, if you don't have a job and this market is ass, absolutely, I highly recommend going and volunteering at a nonprofit. And then you sell it to your family and you sell it to your parents, and you're like, oh, I'm building my resume. I'm making connections, I'm doing skills. And so you are out doing something that gets you out of the house and out from under your parents, direct control all of the time, because sitting at home all day with them or whenever they're there is it's like it's so wearing. It's so wearing. And you're like adrenaline goes up. It's the worst. Um yeah, so if you can, I super recommend like trying to volunteer at a nonprofit. That's tough. So yeah, that's crazy. You have siblings who drive. They should help you drive. Um, so I don't want to get super sidetracked, because I just don't know enough to like give you a lot of support that would be specific to your situation. I stay at home a lot and only go out for appointments. Yeah, I would flip that. I would be out. That's what I did. I was study groups and the library and nonprofits. And in fact, I had a job at a bike store and when I was in high school, and I rode my bike from my house to the school to the job to back home. It was like 21 miles, like all added up. But I was like, I cannot be in this house. Granted, I was in high school. You have a lot of energy, so I'm not saying that that works for your situation, but even, if you can figure out a bus option, thing to like start to consistently get you out and finding a place to be that's not the home. And I cannot recommend the library highly enough. But like your case manager, your life coach, like your therapist, they're all gonna have a much better idea of like what could work for you. I just know I literally was like, I'm going to ride my bike. I cannot take this. And then when I went to college, you have to come back home. And I was like, I'll just sleep in my car. I can't. Um, so yeah. All right. I am so sorry to do this. I normally don't do the lives like longer than 30 minutes. Um, so I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna end it here. Girl, yeah, or boy, sorry, I don't want to assume. Seriously though, I was in shape. Now, if you live in a hilly area, this might not be the best idea for you, but you'd be surprised. Oh, I see. Okay, this is gonna sound crazy. A lot of the homeless around me, they have those like electric scooter things. They rent the electric scooter so they can get around places. So I had the bike. I've seen like my local homeless with the electric scooter. I know there was a time I was working at a law firm downtown and I just took the bus into work and back every day. So I mean, sure it was longer, but literally better than being at home. If home sucks, any bus, plane, whatever. I I was I don't mean plane, but you can it's annoying and tedious, but annoying and tedious is less worse than being at home with abusers. So the more you can get out, you know, library, nonprofit, literally anywhere is better than being at home, in my opinion. And often for these kind of abusers, they sometimes when you give them something to brag about, they get less annoying and abusive. But it's honestly it's so variable to your specific situation. I but it's maybe a long shot. Alrighty, so yeah, sorry to get sidetracked like that, everybody. I will talk to you next time, and I hope that you are a job at a domestic abuse shelter. Oh my gosh, yes. 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 The other thing too is like domestic violence shelters, I talk about this all the time. They have programs. That's how I got a car. I wasn't in the shelter piece. I went through the program and I went to like classes and stuff. And then they referred to a different nonprofit because they have a network of nonprofits. And I got referred to one that does like cars for people coming through certain programs. And so I only paid like registration fees and something like that. So it was like less than $500. And then I had a car and I was able to drive around and go to work and be independent. But you know, whatever you can manage, is what makes sense to you. But yeah, you might be able to work at a domestic violence shelter. You might be able to volunteer. They often have good training programs, even if you don't end up like staying there. I did the one for my local shelter, and it was a great program, and you got to meet a lot of people too. So sometimes it's really good to like get in that section of the nonprofit community in your area, and then you can learn about like all the programs. There are so many. Anyway, yeah, I hope this makes sense. Um, and I will talk to you guys next time. Alrighty. Okay, bye.